In 19th century America, where borders kept shifting and laws were fragile, street duels often settled disputes. Famous gunfighters emerged. Some outlaws, others sheriffs tired of waiting for judges. Surviving took aim, courage, and a good reputation. Up next, meet 10 figures whose gunpowder and fame shaped what we now call the Wild West. Number 10. William Curly Bill Brochious made his name in Arizona for more than just his curly hair. He became a central figure at a time when the frontier was still deciding what counted as law. When Old Man Clanton died, Brochious took command of the Cowboys, a group of cattle rustlers and gunmen who ruled over Tombstone and Cochise County. The region was a patchwork of interests: ranchers, miners, sheriffs, and judges all trying to keep some kind of order. Curly Bill knew how to play that game. At times he acted like a kind of shadow authority, collecting fees and trading favors, always with the convenient support of Sheriff John Behan, who preferred deals over shootouts. But the same man who made alliances was also driven by impulse. Curly Bill drank hard, and the mix of whiskey and a revolver rarely ended well. One night in 1880, after a heavy drinking spree, Marshal Fred White tried to disarm him to avoid trouble. The gun went off and White was mortally wounded. Even as he was dying, he said the shot had been an accident. Wyatt Earp backed that version in court and Curly Bill was acquitted. But Tombstone didn't forget. The town split between those who sided with the Earps and those loyal to the Cowboys, and tension spread like gunpowder. 2 years later, Wyatt's brother Morgan was murdered. The balance was gone. Wyatt set out for revenge and found Curly Bill at Iron Springs. The fight lasted only seconds. Dust, shouts, gunfire. When the silence returned, Brochious was dead. That bullet ended an era. The story of Curly Bill is the portrait of a West still taking shape, where justice, revenge, and power blurred together, and surviving meant enforcing your own version of the law. Number 9. Sam Bass seemed to be on the right track until life took a sharp turn the other way. As a young man, he ran away from his violent uncle's house, found work at a sawmill in Mississippi, and dreamed of wearing a cowboy hat. He went to Texas to try his luck with cattle, but quickly found out that ranch life wasn't for him. In 1876, he teamed up with Joel Collins to drive a herd of longhorns north. They sold the cattle, pocketed about $8,000 that didn't belong to them, and blew almost all of it gambling in Deadwood. From there, robbing stagecoaches was just a short step away. Little profit, lots of dust. So the gang changed targets: trains. In their most famous heist, they hit the Union Pacific Gold Train and made off with over $60,000, a record for the company. The response came fast. In Round Rock, the Texas Rangers caught up with them just as the gang was eyeing a bank. Sam fought as long as he could but died 2 days later, on what would have been his 27th birthday. Number 8. James B. Miller. Known as Deacon Jim for being devoted to church and staying away from drinking and smoking, he kept up a respectable image while making money in a darker business: killing for hire. He charged anywhere from $150 to $2,000, which was a lot for the time. He preferred nighttime ambushes, wearing a long overcoat, and kept a steel plate on his chest, a homemade vest that had already saved him from bullets. Records confirm at least 14 killings. Stories suggest far more, maybe close to 50. His end came in 1909 in Oklahoma, after the murder of rancher and former U.S. Deputy Marshal A.A. Gus Bobbitt. Arrested with his partners, Miller fell into the hands of townspeople who didn't trust a local jury. Before dawn, a mob broke into the jail, dragged the 4 men to a barn, and decided to hang them without trial. Miller stayed calm to the very end. He asked that his ring be given to his wife, a relative of John Wesley Hardin, and that he be allowed to keep his hat on. He stepped up on the box, adjusted the rope, and said, "Let her rip." Then he jumped. The bodies hung for hours. The scene made headlines and showed how the frontier still settled things outside the courtroom. And that's how Miller lived on through time. On the surface, faith and good manners. Underneath, a gunman who worked in the dark and charged whatever price fear would pay. Number 7. Belle Starr. Myra Maybelle Shirley was born in 1848 in Missouri and grew up surrounded by books and the echoes of the Civil War. She studied at Carthage Female Academy and played the piano. But what truly marked her youth were the visits from Cole Younger and the James brothers, Jesse and Frank, to her family's farm. That's where Belle learned about alliances, codes, and getaways. In 1866, she married Jim Reed, a former Confederate guerrilla. They tried to build a life in Texas, but debt and easy money pulled Reed into cattle and horse theft, working alongside the Cherokee Starr family. Belle already knew the roots, who could be bribed, and how to use her network to move stolen goods and hide accomplices. In 1874, Reed was killed while resisting arrest. Widowed, Belle kept the operation running, hosting wanted men, trading marked horses, and becoming a newspaper headline. In 1880, she married Sam Starr. 2 years later, the couple was tried for horse theft by Judge Isaac Parker and served a short sentence in Detroit. When they got out, they went right back to what they knew best: hideouts, lookouts, bribes, and silence. The story ends on February 3, 1889. Belle was riding near Eufaula when gunshots brought her down. She was just 2 days shy of her 41st birthday. The killer was never found. What remained was the image the newspapers called the Bandit Queen. Less romance and more survival in a West born from shifting borders, post-war chaos, and deals made on the fly. Number 6. The Sundance Kid. Born Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, he got his nickname after serving time for horse theft in Sundance, Wyoming. Despite his reputation as a gunfighter, there's no solid proof he ever killed anyone. After his release, he teamed up with Robert Leroy Parker, better known as Butch Cassidy, and joined the group that would go down in history as the Wild Bunch. The gang robbed trains and banks across several states until the Pinkerton detectives closed in. With the noose tightening, Sundance, Butch, and Etta Place fled to Argentina. From there, the trail gets blurry. The most accepted version says Sundance was killed in a shootout in Bolivia in 1908. Other stories claim he made it back to the United States and lived under a different name in Duchesne, Utah, until 1936. Decades later, exhumations and DNA tests tried to prove who really died in Bolivia. The results remain inconclusive, keeping alive the legend of an outlaw who crossed both borders and versions of his own story. Number 5. Butch Cassidy. Born Robert Leroy Parker in 1866 in Circleville, Utah, he grew up on farms. As a teenager, he worked on a ranch and met a cowboy named Mike Cassidy, who became his mentor. Mike taught him how to shoot, ride, and understand the unspoken rules of the West. Out of gratitude, Parker took his friend's last name and started calling himself Butch Cassidy. One early episode revealed his personal code. Needing a pair of overalls, he broke into a closed store, took what he needed, and left a note promising to pay later. The owner called the sheriff, but it didn't lead to a conviction, and the young man earned a reputation for bending the rules without breaking his word. In 1889, Cassidy and his partners robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride, taking $21,000. With part of the money, he bought a ranch near the hole-in-the-wall hideout. The place served as a rest stop for horses and friends. As an actual ranch, it hardly ever was. In the following years, alongside Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, he helped organize the Wild Bunch. The group perfected escape routes, quick horse swaps, and fair profit splits, hitting trains and banks one after another. As for his end, it remains a mystery. Many say he was killed in Bolivia. Family stories suggest otherwise, that he made it back and lived under another name. The West kept both versions alive, and that's why his story still holds our attention. Number 4. Cole Younger. Born in Missouri, Thomas Coleman Younger grew up in a family of merchants. The Civil War shattered that routine. In 1862, his father, Henry Washington Younger, was killed by a Union patrol. That loss changed everything. Still a young man, Cole sided with the Confederates and started living by the gun, riding with bands that crossed counties divided by loyalty and revenge. After the war, peace never really came. In 1868, the Nimrod Long and Company Bank in Russellville, Kentucky was robbed, and Cole's name hit the papers. Soon after, he joined his brothers Jim and Bob and later Jesse and Frank James. The group roamed through Missouri, Kansas, and neighboring states, hitting stagecoaches, trains, and banks, often relying on local sympathizers. The cycle broke on September 7, 1876, in Northfield, Minnesota. The plan went wrong. Townspeople fought back, and the escape turned into a manhunt. The Youngers were surrounded. To avoid the gallows, Cole, Jim, and Bob pleaded guilty and were sentenced to life in prison. In 1901, Cole was granted parole. Jim couldn't handle the restrictions and died in 1902. Cole took a different path: public speaking, a touring show with Frank James, and even a book. He died in 1916 in Missouri, carrying the scars of 11 gunshot wounds. His story shows how the frontier and the war pushed a young man from a good family into crime, and later into the search for peace. Number 3, John Wesley Hardin. The son of a Methodist preacher who named him after the church's founder, he grew up surrounded by sermons and six-shooters in a Texas still reeling from the Civil War. At 14, he got into a school fight that ended in a stabbing. From then on, every argument seemed to lead to another, in a place where honor was settled by the trigger. A year later, he killed a formerly enslaved man after an ambush, claiming he fired in self-defense. In a state under Reconstruction, torn by racial and political tension, Hardin knew he'd never get a fair trial, so he vanished into the dust. His reputation spread faster than he could ride. Posses after posses tried to catch him. Reports from the time blur the line between kills, injuries, and narrow escapes. In 1871, he reached Abilene, Kansas, where the sheriff was Wild Bill Hickok. Staying at the American House Hotel, Hardin got annoyed by the noise coming from the next room and fired through the wall. The bullet killed Charles Cougar. That's where the saying, "he killed a man for snoring," came from, and Hardin climbed out the window before Hickok could get there. Life kept its pace: rigged card games, cattle trails, and run-ins with the law. In 1877, he was finally caught and sentenced to prison. He served 17 years, studied behind bars, and came out a lawyer in 1894, trying to start over in a West that was already changing. But he didn't have much time to prove himself. In 1895, in El Paso, John Selman shot him in the head inside the Acme Saloon. His story, from religious boy to a violent end in a bar, shows less of a movie villain and more of a hard-edged product of a country in transition, where law, revenge, and survival walked side by side. Number 2, Billy the Kid. Born Henry McCarty, also known as William H. Bonney, he became a legend before he even turned 21. The stories say he killed one man for every year of his life, though records confirm 4 deaths for sure. An orphan, he traveled from the east to New Mexico looking for work and protection. In 1877, he joined the ranch of John Tunstall, a British rancher who was standing up to the monopoly held by merchants Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan in Lincoln County. On February 18, 1878, Tunstall was shot and killed while herding cattle. His death sparked the Lincoln County War, a mix of business rivalry, politics, and revenge. Billy and a group of cowhands were sworn in as regulators to bring the killers to justice. The conflict turned into a string of ambushes, confusing orders, and broken deals. Governor Samuel Axtell weakened Tunstall's allies. In 1879, the new governor, Lew Wallace, tried to calm things down with an amnesty offer. Billy negotiated but feared being made the scapegoat. What followed were arrests, jailbreaks, and a growing legend fed by every newspaper headline. In December 1880, Pat Garrett was elected sheriff with one clear goal: to end the story. He caught Billy, who then escaped from the Lincoln County Jail in April 1881, killing 2 deputies during his getaway. The chase ended on July 14, 1881, at Pete Maxwell's house in Fort Sumner. In the dark, Garrett fired first. After that, rumors spread that Billy had survived. Doubles, imposters, and endless tales, but none ever proven. What remains is the portrait of a young man shaped by a harsh land and a weak system, where loyalty mattered more than law. The legend outgrew the man and still draws attention, not just for what he did, but for what people say he did. Number 1, Jesse James was born in Missouri and grew up in a country torn apart by the Civil War. Still a teenager, he followed his brother Frank into the Confederate guerrilla forces. The war ended, but the violence didn't. During Reconstruction, banks, stagecoaches, and trains became targets, and the brothers teamed up with the Youngers to form the James Younger Gang. Their method was simple: strike fast, switch horses, and vanish down country roads. In 1869, in Gallatin, Missouri, Jesse walked into the Daviess County Savings Association and killed the wrong man, mistaking him for an old enemy from the war. From that point on, he wasn't just hunted by the law, he also faced public judgment. To change that, Jesse turned to the press. He found an ally in John Newman Edwards, editor of the Kansas City Times and a pro-Confederate veteran. In the paper's pages, Jesse was portrayed as a victim of bankers and politicians, a man standing up for his people. Letters attributed to him reinforced the image of honor and loyalty. The outlaw started to look like a folk hero, gaining sympathy that brought him tips, shelter, and a degree of local protection. It was all strategy. While the gang hid, the legend grew. But the legend couldn't protect him forever. Private detectives closed in, rewards grew, and the gang fell apart. Living under fake names, Jesse kept moving whenever rumors got too close. On April 3, 1882, in St. Joseph, it all ended. Robert Ford, a member of his own gang, shot him in the back while Jesse was adjusting a picture on the wall. The news spread across the country. On his tomb, his mother Zerelda chose the inscription, "Whose hands were not worthy to touch him here." It summed up the contradiction behind his fame. A man who tried to rewrite his past through robberies and headlines, remembered as a hero by some and a criminal by others.